Thank you, folks, and good morning. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak. It's an opportunity for me to say some things, but I hope also it will be an opportunity for me to hear some things in addition to the motions that I've just heard. It's a very timely opportunity that we should meet in this way because the Irish higher education system is undergoing a transformation. And I think transformation isn't too big a word for it. The National Strategy for Higher Education, the so-called Hunt Report, is no fine tome full of rhetoric gathering dust on some civil service shelf in Dublin. Its implementation is in full flow and is coming to a college near you very rapidly. And this is transformation with a purpose. This isn't just some bureaucrat's idea of having a bit of fun on a boring day. The purpose essentially being a better quality student experience, more effective higher education institutions offering a higher quality education for all students, as well as a system of interconnected institutions which more effectively meet the economic and social needs of Ireland. Now, while the national strategy itself, the Hunt Report, set out very broad objectives and directions for the Irish higher education system up to 2030, it didn't actually, nor was it expected to, set out the detail. And that's a space that has been filled earlier this year by the publication by the HEA of a document called Towards a Future Landscape for Higher Education. And with that document, we also published related documents on regional clusters and technological universities. And I will comment very briefly on some of that. As well as a quality experience and outcomes for students, another key driver of reform in higher education is meeting the demand for higher education. The demand is enormous. Further expansion of the system is essential if we are to support access by those who can and wish to benefit from higher education. And these include not just school leavers, which are the traditional entrance to higher education, but also adults. And many of those adults have had no previous experience of higher education. So the demand is great. And to meet the wide range of demand, we need a range of institutional types with clearly differentiated missions, providing a complementary range of all the academic disciplines that are needed in our economy and society. High levels of interinstitutional collaboration are required so that specialisation at institutional level, in terms of being very mission-focused, does not lead to diminished opportunities for students at regional and national levels. And it's here that clusters of institutions, what the Hunt Report refers to as regional clusters of institutions working closely in collaboration, addressing the needs of the region, have a very particular relevance. In this system of mission-diverse institutions, the potential for a technological university is created and has attracted very special attention. And I suspect that around the country right now it's also attracting a lot of attention from a lot of highly paid consultants advising various institutions. But it's important to emphasise that a technological university is not a university in the traditional sense, of which we have quite enough. It is a new kind of university. The rationale really is that in advancing our economic development, there is benefit in developing at university level, and I will continue to emphasise at university level, institutions where the disciplines offered, the teaching methods used, and the research undertaken are all underpinned by active and focused engagement with enterprise and with technological industries. The national strategy, in addressing this issue of technological universities, also identified a need to provide a developmental pathway for those institutes of technology that have established themselves as being significantly more advanced than others, advanced in terms of quality, breadth, and depth of their activities. And by providing the technological university pathway, this trend towards higher levels of performance in those institutes of technology is further incentivised and enhanced. But a technological university will be to the advantage of its students, its graduates, its region and the country as a whole only if it meets the rigorous standards that clearly place it in a category internationally recognisable as a high-quality university. This is not and cannot be an exercise merely in changing nameplates. So to that end, the HEA has published, with the landscape document, detailed criteria and a process for the creation of technological universities. And these will bring objectivity and transparency to the process of designation and give national and international standing to any technological university established in that way. At the end of this year, or by the end of this year, the HEA will advise the Minister for Education and Skills on a detailed structure or blueprint for the higher education system. Effectively, we will set out the range of institutions, the missions, the collaborations, the regional clusters, and the institutions that will or are likely to progress to technological university status. In doing this, and it's a fairly tall order, I'd have to admit, in doing this, we'll rely both on the strategic priorities and the strategic choices of the institutions themselves. We'll rely on advice from international experts on potential optimal configurations of our system, and we'll rely on our own knowledge of the system, of the institutions, and of the social and economic needs of the country. Let me assure you that a key focus for all of this is not structures for structure's sake. The key focus is the student and the quality of the experience for the student and the quality of the outcomes, the learning outcomes for the student. And can I say to this Congress that the ultimate driver of the reform that we have now embarked upon has to be you, the students. In that context, USI, as the representative body for students, must act as the voice not just for current students, but also for aspiring students, both those today who can't access higher education, either for financial or cultural reasons, and also for future potential students who may have their access to quality higher education greatly constrained by unsustainable funding levels. In that way, in fact, I think I'm echoing a comment made by President Higgins to the Congress yesterday when he spoke of the need for a strong and independent student voice. And that is certainly something that the HEA would strongly encourage. USI has to be a champion of student-centred reform in higher education to make sure that as we reform, we keep pace with international developments such as improved student engagement in feedback on the quality of teaching and support services. USI has a role as a quality watchdog. Individual students are not very well placed to be sure as to whether at any point in their programme that programme is good or bad. But USI, given its resources and given its longer-term perspective, can help monitor trends in performance and set expectations for improved performance where appropriate. I'm actually quite optimistic, and I'm sure you are, knowing your organisation quite well, that USI can fulfil these roles, because I have observed the very engaged and proactive approach of USI to sectoral development in many areas. And our chair was just mentioning it. I've also observed USI leaders for quite some time now as members of the Higher Education Authority. I'm well aware of the contribution that USI leaders make on boards such as the Irish Higher Education Quality Network, the National Qualifications Authority, HETAC, and so on. So there's a big role for USI, there's a big opportunity for USI to ensure that what we are doing in reform is ultimately to the benefit of students. Moving on from the strategy and perhaps taking the image down a bit from looking to the horizon, I'm well aware that the financial crisis that the country is currently going through is putting extreme strain on what is referred to in broad terms as the student experience. I know that at institutional level, efforts are being made to protect and maintain the academic core of the student experience, but I'm also aware of the strain that there is on a whole range of student services, whether it's counselling, career guidance, health services, and so on. And I'm also aware of the strain that exists on learning support such as tutorials and library services. Now, I come back to that again. A key recommendation of the national strategy is the development of a national student survey. Now, this survey, in my view, will go a long distance towards addressing one of the key difficulties that we, and by we I mean the HEA as well, have at present, a lack of hard evidence on the issue of quality in higher education. One of the difficulties the HEA has in making the case that the diminishing resources is impacting on quality is that departments concerned with public expenditure only have to ask, prove it, and we don't have the data. This National Student Survey could be very much a part of that data in the future, and USI has played a very big part in progressing this recommendation over recent months, and I can reassure you of the full support of the HEA in designing and implementing a world-class student survey to explore student satisfaction, student engagement, and the student experience more broadly. The next few months will be crucial in securing the support and cooperation of institutional leaders, who by and large are supportive, but I wouldn't necessarily say it is universal. And also in achieving these goals, I very much look forward to working with students and with institutional leaders on getting this very important piece of work done. Basically, the implementation of the national strategy, to repeat myself somewhat, will ultimately be judged by its impact on the quality of the student experience and on the quality of graduates. All aspects of the strategy must and will be evaluated and implemented with this in mind. It's for students that we want to achieve greater coherence in the system, greater consolidation to ensure critical mass and depth of faculty, and greater cooperation to give us global impact in the area of postgraduate studies and cutting-edge research. But ultimately, and I think we all know this, the national strategy for higher education will be no more than the fine rhetoric that I referred to at the beginning, and its implementation will account for absolutely nothing unless we, as a society, find a way in which to sustainably fund the institutes, universities, and other colleges, as well as the student supports that are needed. Excuse me. Some statistics. Since 2008, public funding for higher education has been reduced by approximately 26%. Now, in fairness to government, and you might not necessarily want to be fair to government, but in fairness to government, this has been less than in other publicly funded programmes. And it has been offset to some extent by reductions in pay for staff, and of course, you'll be well aware, by increase in the contribution made directly by yourselves, by students. In addition to funding cuts, however, staff numbers have been reduced by over 7%, while full-time student numbers have increased by 11%. And the government has given you, and given me, and given everybody fair warning that there is more of the same in the next 4 budgets. And they have no choice. This has the makings of an appalling vista unless we can find another way. And maybe we can start by learning from history. Throughout the 60s, 70s and 80s, successive Irish governments invested in education at all levels. And if there's any bright spark now in our benighted economy that might ultimately ignite a flame of economic recovery, it's the impact of that decades-old investment. Its impact in the scale and quality of foreign direct investment and jobs. Its impact in our surging exports in an otherwise economic wasteland and the jobs it provides. Its impact in the creativity of the best of our small and medium enterprises and the jobs they provide. We have a crisis in public finances, no doubt about that. But while dealing with that, let policymakers and government keep at least half an eye on a future beyond recession and the impact that wise investment now in education can have for future generations of Irish people. Let us learn from our past. If we don't, our future could be very bleak indeed. But let me be frank with you. It's not just government and policymakers who have a responsibility for your future. for the future of your contemporaries who never made it to college, and for the future even of your children. You have a responsibility. You, as students, as beneficiaries over your lifetime of the education now being provided at great cost to taxpayers. You have a responsibility to be a part of the solution to the problem of funding your education. I mean, consider, would you really have the government reduce social welfare payments so that your education can be adequately funded? Or should we, as a society, decide to cut pensions for the elderly so that the young can be educated? Will we close hospitals or withdraw funding from important environmental programs? Or even to refer back to a motion earlier, will we cut the minimum wage? If we are not to compromise the quality of our higher education system, then we have to find more resources and invest those in higher education. And to find them, these and other options, even less palatable, are real choices. They're real choices for government, for policymakers, for your families, and for you. Alternatively, of course, we could, in time-honoured tradition, ignore the problem. We could ignore the fact that there is a relationship between resources and quality. And will we ignore it till we damage the fine reputation that an Irish higher education qualification has all over the world? The reputation that actually will open doors of opportunity for you wherever you go. Or will we instead limit the number of you who can be allowed access to higher education and the success it brings, so that those who do manage to get in can enjoy that success, while your contemporaries do not get in, while your contemporaries who do not get in can look forward to lives of dashed hopes and poverty. Those are choices as well. Anyway, I think you get the point. And in fairness to you, in fairness to many of you certainly in this room, I think you got the point even before I started to speak. I was greatly encouraged by media reports of the tone and content of your debates in the past few days on this particular subject. One particular quote from Pat de Bruin, a UCD student leader, I noticed, he said, "Students are showing a willingness to engage constructively in order to preserve the future of our higher education system." Now that, folks, is surely the right place to start. The economic renewal of Ireland and our national capacity to respond to the social, civic and technological challenges we face is critically dependent on the quality of our higher education system, and ultimately on the quality of our graduates, the quality of your education. And we have to exercise all the creativity indeed that President Higgins again spoke about yesterday, all the creativity to solve the riddle of sustainable funding. For the HEA, and as Chief Executive of the HEA, I greatly look forward to working with USI and with your leaders in finding an approach to funding higher education which ensures a sustainable funding base for the system, and also which supports those students who need financial support. And I'll conclude there, but I'm happy to take questions, comments, or arguments. Thank you very much.
Love it. Okay, Congress, do we have any questions then?